Hello. Who are you inspired of by? Who are you inspired of? That's consumption because everything is inspiration, regardless. Whatever you consume, you make into inspiration. And what you feed yourself with is what your subconscious mind eventually becomes, as this is what you maintain as to create a projection from within yourself and get a reflection back. So, are you interested in something that is destructive, constructive? Are you inspired by sadness, sorrow? Are you inspired by joy? Are you inspired by happiness? Are you inspired by bravery? Are you inspired by honesty? Are you inspired by something that might be destructive in some shape or form, but can you utilize that source of inspiration as to not judge it, but to see how good it is in the potential of it, but notice what could have been done differently as to make that more of a compassionate, loving, constructive creation. Like this dude, whom I love so much, that was a poet, was a lover, was a peacemaker, but at the same time was struggling a lot with himself. And in the universe, everything is attraction. And that attraction is based on your dedication as to maintain what you desire more of, but becomes what you need as to tell you if you are on your path doing what is constructive, which is loving and compassionate, or not. So from that struggle, Tupac fought with himself and attracted various circumstances and situations that did not benefit his sole intention of becoming more of the poet, the lover, and the peacemaker that he was. And that's a shame. So who are you inspired of? And what can you see in that person, dead or living, here or not? Because Tupac is not dead. The thing is, what you can actually see in people being fans of others is such a nuance, because there are people listening to Tupac's music that kill, that murder, that rob, that rape, which is something that Tupac was not about. Tupac was not a gangster. Tupac's music is not gangster music. Tupac was a lover. Tupac was a poet and a peacemaker. Now, he may have done things that weren't super in the line of that, because we all make mistakes and everybody is forgiven. But we need to forgive ourselves And this is the struggle, because we only fight with our own mind. So we need to be humble before God, which becomes trouble, especially for a man, which is somebody who is very driven by their nature as to succeed, but wishes to do that in independence, being strong in themselves, when there is a God outside of them. It becomes contradictory as to be humble, as to give it up for another man, because there is no Father God. Father God is not existing and has never existed and will never exist, because God is love, and love is the equivalent with a singularity definition of isness, which is soul, which is what you is. So what Tupac and other people struggling in conflict with themselves is in relation to their own mind, not giving it up for themselves as to receive their own love. That's the problem with anybody struggling, and anybody getting a reflection of their projection, acting ungrateful, not being humble, because grateful and humble are like the two circles that create the infinity of love for eternal existence. And that is somebody who is not feeling worthy for having a life. So you cannot be not humble, you cannot be ungrateful, because that's an identity. Both of those are behaviors, and it's all about relating, which calls for a relationship with yourself, which you can only have in humility, that makes you feel grateful. And when you feel grateful, you lose that facade and that fortress of self-defense against giving it up. So you can see what trouble it becomes when that is to something outside of you, when you want to be independent and strong within. That's virus. That's error. That's a bot. That's a bot placed there by people who knew what they were doing, all to gain control, to have the masses submissive with oppression, only with a false facade and image of being their saviors, which made the people do this as to be approved and affirmed, and to find peace and serenity and freedom, which you can only find in relation to yourself, as you forgive yourself, which cannot happen if you do not own it, because you cannot get rid of what you do not have. And if you have it because you have created it, because you have misbehaved, you have done a mistake, then you are owning it. And then you have to claim it. And then you have to take responsibility for it. And then you have to forgive it, which is all about humility. And when you do that, you free yourself every time you do it, which makes you feel so grateful. And then you're back to love again. And that's love. So this is the story for anybody. It's the story for somebody who has massacred 30 people in like a cult, drinking poison and going to Jupiter or whatever. And it's somebody who said something mean to somebody at the grocery store this morning. It's the same thing. Everything is an expression of the same thing. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you look at a stone, a pointy stone that you hold between your thumb and your index finger, and you hold that up so it aligns with the horizon, you can use your imagination like a child and look at that like, oh, look, it's like I'm holding a mountain, right? And you can also see a mountain way in the distance, and you can use your thumb and your index finger as to hold that mountain. And like, look, it's like I'm holding a stone. And that's life. Because everything is just perception. Everything is perception. So what you want is accessible and possible. Anything is possible. There is just perception. And that's the challenge of challenging your mind as to become. When you want to become something, you already is it, because you are soul. And your soul is free and rich without limit. So how much are you identifying with that? And if you look at this, if you say, like, hypothetically that I'm gonna be 97 and my destiny makes for this amount of richness, which is all about my connection to love in experience within myself as to be true. And then you have a level of nuance in between there, which is acknowledgement and affirmation in relation to yourself, being humble before yourself, true self, not your personal identity or mind, but your soul. And you can not affirm and not acknowledge that in various degrees, which is you identifying with something else, which is a lie, because that's not your true self. So if you lie about it a lot, then you are here. And when you start to affirm and acknowledge yourself, your true self, you become more true, and thus you come closer to a true reflection, because everything is projection. So say that this level is you lying 97% of your experience in your projection, reflection, what you maintain and what you have in your subconscious mind, what you keep telling yourself, and what you affirm and acknowledge as to what other people have told you you are, which you can change and transform. You are 97% shade, and this is bright light with 100% lit. So the more you become true and the more you affirm your true self and soul and take on the journey as to accept the challenge in a positive expectation, looking at life like an adventure, then you rise to the occasion, and the occasion is now. The occasion is now. So you rise to the occasion of being here now as much as possible. And the true power in this is that you need to be aware. Because if you're not aware, things are just being maintained without your knowledge, as the mind will use the prior programming that you accept. But you can always transform and change. So what makes your life become miserable is worry. And the more you worry, the more you get to be worried about. So if you're not aware of how much you worry, the worry is actually entertaining the lie, and the lie grows, and you become dark in self-perception, which is untrue. And not your true self. So the more present you are, just as in being here as much as possible, which is our relaxed, focused state. It's not like I'm gonna be here now. It's not that. We see that this is hurting everybody. Tension is the worst. But there will be tension when you pursue your destiny and challenge, as you will be challenged. But to be present and to be here now makes you aware. And what that awareness brings is what you are actually maintaining. So in that presence, you can ask yourself, why? Why am I worried? Why am I being judgmental? Why am I being negative in relation to myself? You can be that in relation to other people, but that's secondary to the primary you, because everything stems from you. So you cannot lie primarily to another human being. You lie to yourself first, and then secondary to them. So everything is inside out. So you just need to be true to self, and you need to be true to you, because love is true and love is free. So what do you have to lose? Well, it's the static definition of who you are and who you will forever be, in not being a responsible human being, as to enjoy yourself as much as possible. And that has become a problem in society, where ego mentality has grown into like 99% in the world, because the world is really dark and the economy is going to shit, because the reinforced ego makes for inflation, and the contrary is to identify with soul, which is deflation, because everything is about pressure in this third dimensional reality. So it's really important to identify correctly, and you cannot identify with anything else than what is, which is isness, which is love, which is infinite, which is free. And why the ego has become what it has become is because people have seen how destructive the ego is when it discards emotion, because the ego is an identity which is rational and logic. And the more you identify with that, you have to discard emotion and make yourself inhumane. The more you identify with soul and accept emotions, the more humane you become. And you are human, you are a humane being, you are a soul being of pure love. So it's a good idea to do this. But the problem is that we have seen this in history over and over, with dictators and tyrants and oppression, submission, control, destruction, damage, war. And we don't want that. And that's the problem, because that's what's creating it. Because you get a return on investment, and everything is energy. So I don't want ego makes for ego, because I invest in ego. The don't and wish something else is just out of the picture. It doesn't matter, because you are focusing your energy and attention on what you do not want, and you get what you give, and this is what you invest in. And that's what the world is all about. So you need to affirm what you want, and look at what you desire and what you want to see more of, and then you will get a reflection of that. And this scale that I showed you, you can tilt that and make that into this lie and truth, ego, soul, and you come to realization, which is self-realization. And you do that with passion, with what you're interested in, because that makes it fun and makes you feel good. And that's what life is all about, to enjoy life, to enjoy your stay, and to make a world of love. And you have to be a loving being, which is not a have to, it's a want to. But we are told from previous generations that we need to work as hard as possible physically, which is not true. It's all about affirmation and acknowledgement of God, love, source. Then you work, but you work in whatever field that you're passionate and interested in. But you do that with joy because you like what you do. That's the game. And this is actually a game. You are temporarily having this spacesuit that looks like what you look like in the mirror. But just look at some NDE clips, near-death experience, where people have been dead for certain amounts of time, timeless. It doesn't exist, time doesn't exist. It's just a third-dimensional measurement as to create distance, but we make that into more of a reality than what it actually is. But they say instantaneously when they get outside the body and see themselves from the outside that, like, what's that body? I don't want to go back to that body. It's not like I don't want to go back to myself. I don't want to go back to me, because that's not this, that's me. I was in that, because that's not who you are. You just have this body. You are a soul being. And we need this ID. We need to come correct, which can only happen in understanding and forgiveness, because you already is. Everybody is. You just is. It just depends on the scale, on how much you maintain inside yourself that speaks against yourself. And you need to become true. And that's not about being, oh, I tell the truth all the time with everything, that's more of a periphery, outside in thing. You need to be honest in relation to yourself, as to forgive yourself, as to understand more and connect with your true self, which is pure inspiration, and you become inspired by yourself, which is you giving you more and more and more of what you want, which is not material initially. It's more understanding emotionally, which enriches you and makes you rich in love. And then life happens. That's life. Projection, reflection. Not reflection, projection. But you understand that ping pong, perhaps. You get what you give. You get a response. The universe is non-conceptual, unconditional love that cannot judge and doesn't know what that is. So God cannot judge and punish. God just is. God is all giving, all forgiving. It's you that is worthy. Tupac was worthy of everything, but honestly did not feel deserving. It's the same for me, it's the same for him, it's the same for you, it's the same for everybody. You truly get a true representation of what you communicate, which is actually what is going on inside you, from the mirror of love, which is true and clean and clear, about what love is. So when you are the same, you will get that back as a universal response of your own emotional communication. Can anybody do this? Yeah. Can anybody pursue their own destiny? Yeah. This is not such a big deal. It's the design of coming to Earth and having a human experience, because this creates a world of love where everybody enjoys themselves. I have been on the other side for 4 hours. I was in a state where there was nothing but light, all love. And when I closed my eyes, there was the same. I could have put a blanket and a sofa and a car and everything above me, and there was just bright light. So for those who believe that paradise is coming after this, no, it is not. Paradise is designed to be paradise on earth, taking care of the greatest gift of all. Not to throw it away, working yourself to death. You are supposed to work yourself, the inner work, as to take care of the world spirit, which is our spirit. And when we do that and come to a more spiritual, emotional, soul, identity society, we will have a paradise on earth, which is the intent from the beginning. If you look at Adam and Eve, the definition and explanation of that story, regardless if it's true or not, is they were given the whole planet with everything for free. Just enjoy yourself. You're welcome. And then ego grew, which is actually all about starting to question things and looking at maybe it's better, maybe this is, and letting the mind take control, the rational, logical mind, becoming more and more ego. And as that is given energy and attention in greed and selfishness, it grows. So maybe Adam and Eve were equal in the paradise, but Adam maybe put himself a little bit above, lacking humility and not grateful for everything. And that grew, and that created conflict, which created opposition between those two, and the ego grew in Eve as well as she felt mistreated. So that becomes ego ping pong. And then we have many thousands of years after that, where the ego has been given and given and given, which is more or less like, thank you, Satan. Thank you, Satan. Thank you, devil. Thank you, Satan. And you will get a representation of that, which makes for a world of war. All self-created from us, as we are the world. We are the children. We are the ones. Every one of us. You are the one. I am the one. I am Jesus. You are Jesus. There are 12 gross personality traits of a human being. There are 12 months in a year. There are 12 hours that repeat in contrast, making for a day and night. And there are 12 houses in astrology, which is all about vibration, frequency, and expression. There are 7 major colors, prime colors. There are 7 tones in 1 octave of majors. There are more of those things that I can't recollect right now. But there are correlations, and everything is connected, and everything is the same thing, and everything is an expression of the same thing. So if you learn how to see life like this, and if you look at my website, transmutation.se, and look at my other videos, listen to my music, can you see the colors on Spotify? I've linked to it in a video recently. It's just all your relationship with love herself. Why do I say herself? Because it's the feminine. And I believe that we need to say this because herself, the feminine, is not the ego, it's the soul, which is not competitive in nature, so we can feed it and give it as much attention as possible without creating any competition. That's why. The more you feed the opposite, like Father God, the more you create diversity, segregation, and competition, which makes for war. Because it's all inside out, the ego. That's the devil. The devil is the dim switch shading the light. God is light, love, which is the positive direction going forward. Feminine means forward. Masculine means backwards. So masculine is not bad. Nothing is bad. But masculine is actually the brake, and the feminine is the acceleration. But if you do it right and with a good sense of moral in relation to sex not being love, love is free. But love cannot be free in the open just as much as possible with a misconception of sex being love, because that makes for a terrible, disgusting world. And sex is also supposed to be free. It's not supposed to be judged at all, but not in the expression of anything goes. It's between two people that have consensual sex, which are two people that are in moral comprehension of that, given their sexual maturity, which we only can create the best circumstances and situations as to be loving, actually in relation to knowing as much about what love is, which cannot happen if we do not relate. And we cannot have a healthy relationship with somebody else if we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves. And that makes for all kinds of destructive behaviors, because we satisfy our need, and we only have one need, and that's love. Then we desire and want a lot of things, but those are never needs. All we need is love. And if we need a lot of love with a misconception of what that is, we will give ourselves something contradictory to what the true self actually knows without question, because it doesn't judge and doesn't know what judgment is. So that makes for morality actually being an actuality, because otherwise there would not be a challenge as to learn what love is, and thus not creating a purpose and destiny, making for a challenge while you're here. And there would be no reason to come here, because you would just be pure love and come here for just being in complete light all the time, which makes for you being where you came from, and the world would not exist. Maybe you need to hear that a few times. I got this all inside me like a little pixie book. But the material world has to be created from something, which is the misconception in totality in relation to spirituality, which makes for light and darkness. The physical, the non-physical, the temporary, the infinite, the encore, forever, the see you later, never return again. Because history does not repeat itself, but we keep doing that anyway because we're not affirming in correct, non-material, non-conceptual, unconditional definition. Yeah. So who does inspire you? Who are you inspired of? And what are you eating? Because it's all consumption. Everything is energy. So you might think that, well, that's just music, and that's just conversation, and that's just this group of people, and that's just those kind of movies. But the subconscious mind is non-judgmental and is soul. So it consumes with complete acceptance. And what you give yourself, you become. So what do you want to give yourself, and what do you truly want to become? Do you want to become the most authentic version of yourself, or do you want to become some devious kind of nuanced in between? When becoming the most authentic version of yourself makes you feel the best. And it's actually perfect because you are closer to spirit, which means that you make mistakes, but you can still be the best and perfect, all in relation to self, which creates no competition because it's just you and you challenging yourself. And that's beautiful. That's whoever designed that is a genius. That is amazing. And that's why you're here. So take on the challenge and know what love is. I know what love is. I know this. I have recorded this video. I have created transmutation.se, and I have made all affirmation tracks. During the last 6 months, I think I've done 80 tracks or something, and written lyrics and whatever. And I don't know completely what love is. I can always learn more about love. I can have a conversation with a 10-year-old boy where he just talks relaxed about life, and I will get something out of that, like, yeah, because he will have a different kind of perspective on things, as every experience is completely unique, and what he's going through is in relation to the current manifested reality in the material existence in relation to our comprehension and relationship to spirit. So what he's communicating to me is brand new, and I love that. And I can go talk to a 36-year-old woman, and she will have some kind of new perspective too, which I can only receive as inspiration when I don't judge, because then I'm open and I don't buy it. I don't buy it straight up. I reflect on it a bit, not judging myself. So then we learn, and maybe I say something that makes them realize themselves. And everything is about self-realization. So we realize ourselves together. That's beautiful. And that's the intent of communicating and having relationships with people. It's about friendship. It's about being friends and growing and allowing for more clarity together, which is not missiles, grenades, guns, automatic weapons. And you might think that, well, I am not a supporter of war, but I saw something yesterday that I have never seen before. And I'm 42 years young, and it's just, there was a girl walking outside here. My guess is like 14 years old, maybe, young. And she was having this intense conversation of conflict with somebody on the phone, with video call, FaceTime, or whatever. With like, what I said and she said, and who are you to talk about, conflict? But the thing is that she was in between herself, she was in between the other person she was talking to and a third person, because she was having two iPhones, and one was facing the camera on the FaceTime of the other one. And I guess she flipped those depending on who was talking, and those three were having like a dispute on FaceTime. And that's war. That's a mini war. The mountain, the stone, perception. So that's a war. And I'm super serious about that. That's war. That's warfare. What do you entertain? What are you consuming? What are you creating? What are you bringing to existence as you are God? Everybody is God. There is no the God. God, we are God. We create the world. So that's three politicians. And the politician is full of opinions. The soul cannot judge and has no opinions. The soul just wants to free. The soul just wants to be free. That's why you feel sometimes a bit claustrophobic in relation to your spacesuit, which makes for anxiety, and you want to escape your body because it's a lot of pressure. But that pressure is all about your energy that first and foremost is not focused. So ADHD is non-existent. It's just the biggest piece of shit crap that anybody has made up. It's all about being comfortable and accepting stagnation, which goes against nature that always expands and flows. What it's all about is actually being relaxed and focused, with energy being invested in what you want. But if you don't have a passion and you don't try new things as to figure yourself out and what do I like, what do I prefer, your energy will be like this, because you allow for it. And you cannot medicate that. You're not supposed to. This is the human experience. And if you are defined as autistic, is really artistic, because everybody is an artist. It just depends on what you do. Well, I don't paint pictures. I don't make music. Well, maybe you bake cakes and you talk to people. Maybe you work at a kindergarten and you do amazing work with the little children. That's the greatest artist in the world. If you're a loving parent, that's artistry. That's an artist. We are artists. So if you have a passion and you invest a lot of focused, relaxed energy into what you want, there are no diagnoses, because you are in control, yet not with control, because you are being humble in relation to self, which is identifying with soul and identifying with God and love, which makes the mind relax and become your loyal servant, as you are congruent with a positive, going forward, correct definition of what is true, and the mind lets you go. If you don't do that, the mind will self-correct. And if you don't listen and go against the mind will kill you. And the mind kills you out of love. A suicide happens in love because the mind, the rational thinking, logical mind, knows nothing about color. It knows only black and white, on and off. So it has no nuancing, which is emotions, at all. So it gives you what you ask. And if you go against yourself, you're actually asking to lose more until you eventually lose all. And then you commit suicide, or you become terminally ill and die from your disease because you have created so much tension with internal conflict, not getting inspired, all in judgment, and makes you die, which comes from behaving ungrateful, not being humble, but has a core issue of not feeling deserving and worthy of the life you've been given. And pow, you get shot at 25 years old in Las Vegas fighting over a necklace. It's simple, it's super simple, but then there's also the weather, and it's how much you slept last night, and it's what happened during the week. Are you being fed well in nutrition? Have you had enough water? Have you had other healthy relationships? Did you get fresh air? What are your expectations about the future? Are you worrying a lot about things that happened in the past? Are you a man or a woman? Are you more of an outgoing person, or do you like to be more alone? Do you enjoy apples or bananas? You see, life is complex in that sense, but you don't have to worry about shit. You just have to take care of spirit and be true and be honest and connected in correct posture, which is centered, which is heart, which is being a loving being. If you ping pong between the two hemispheres of the brain, you are being in opposition, being Eve and Adam and the politicians. So you want to affirm and stay here and come back to here. And you need to practice this a little bit each day. And it's just 20 minutes maybe of just being here. Breathing slowly and relaxed with your focused attention on your heart, just feeling love. Feeling love about what? Nothing, because love just is. So you just feel love. And love is joy, love is happiness, love is peace, love is calm, love is loving. It's just love. And that's what you is. I love you. This was one of my best videos. And you know why? Because I just want to give. I just want to give more, because that's the greatest gift of all, to just give. So I hit record and I just do it. I don't have anything prepped. I have a title maybe. This time I had nothing. I had a brief conversation about sexual identity with a friend, where we talked about the English language being international actually messes up humanity more than many would believe, because we say, what sex are you? Are you male or female? And then we identify sexually. And it's like, are you homosexual, heterosexual? Well, you can, it's a definition, but it can never be an identity because you are not true to yourself. So it's not about what is correct in relation to having sex with people. It's, you can have, a man can have sex with another man, a woman can have sex with another woman, as long as it's consensual and mature and not in need of anything else. That's the game. So just do whatever, but not as in anything goes in relation to feeling what is actually unhealthy, because that becomes extremely destructive and hurts yourself and other people. But we cannot identify correctly in any other non-conceptual definition than soul. So no sexual identity. It doesn't work. It's an error. It's a virus. There's nothing wrong with two men being in love. There's nothing wrong with two women being in love and having a relationship either. It's just the identity. It messes up so much. And if you think about sex and love and healthy relationships, somebody who is having a really unhealthy, disloyal, dark self-perception relationship with themselves cannot have a bright, loving, beautiful, true self-perception relationship with anybody else. And that's attraction, because the universe attracts. And people who are, if you have this scale again, which is all in perception, so it doesn't mean anything, like everything you experience is unique. But depending on where you are, you will attract and meet somebody who is equanimous to that, which is the design by love, because you are at a position where you can grow together and you have met each other in interest and attraction of physicality and hopefully some kind of personal relational aspects. So there's a very important thing to be understood there, which is not to engage in a relationship initially based on sex and then get to know each other a year after that. It's just become friends. You become a good friend with yourself. Be best friends with yourself. Treat yourself good. Be honest and true. And then you will become attractive to that outside of you, because that's also a projection reflection. It's the same as every kind of relationship. The relationship with your apartment or your bike or your money or your house or your whatever. And then you can develop that into becoming more intimate together, because you cannot keep off each other. But it should be based on a really good friendship, because that's healthy, because that is actually investing in what gives.